No, no. Hi, everybody. How's it going? This is Eden of Light Cycle Astrology. Welcome back to the channel, friends. Today, we're taking a look at another week of astrology. We're looking at astrology that's happening in February 2025, between February the 3rd and the 9th. This week, we have a pretty exciting Mercury Cazimi in the sign of Aquarius that is in square to the planet Uranus. That's when the Sun and Mercury conjoin in the sky. And this is building throughout the week. This happens at the end of the week. And simultaneously, while this Cazimi is perfecting, we have a Mars trine Saturn aspect that also perfects within minutes of the Cazimi. So we'll get into four of my interpretations for the astrology. And we'll also take a look at the timing. Before we get into it, though, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit notifications so you don't miss any videos. Leave some comments in the comment section. And if you're interested in getting a reading from me, you can go to lightcycleastrology.com. All right, before we get into my four interpretive meanings or themes that go along with the astrology this week, let's take a look at the timing of it. So I have the real-time clock set to February the 3rd, 2025. And it's pretty late here. So let's roll it back. GMT time, by the way, guys. And you can see as February the 3rd opens this Monday, we have Mercury and the Sun pretty close together here in Aquarius. I've got Saturn in Pisces that is already forming that trine to Mars. And then I have Uranus hanging out over here in Taurus. I've taken out the planets that we're not looking at this week. But as Monday rolls around, as we just said, you can already see Mars beginning to be in trine with Saturn. Now, as we go to Wednesday, we have the Sun and Mercury moving in with a 3-degree range of engagement of a conjunction, or what ancient astrologers called an adherence. So Mercury and the Sun being really close by Wednesday, heading towards the Cazimi on Saturday. And then if we go forward to Saturday here, we are going to get the beginning of the square that the Sun makes to Uranus. Now, this happens pretty late Saturday, so more almost into Sunday. There you go. The Sun begins to form a square with Uranus, and then, of course, Mercury is going to join the Sun on Sunday. If we go forward here one more day, and there we have Mercury passing over the Sun on Sunday. Now, one of the things that's really important when you get any planet conjoining the Sun, but especially the inner planets, I feel like they go from that distinction of being either a morning star into an evening star, or they become if they were an evening star, they become a morning star. In this particular example, we have Mercury passing over to the Sun, and you can see that Mercury is changing sides of the Sun and will now be setting just after the Sun sets. So we have Mercury going from a morning star into an evening star, which is part of the kind of interpretation that you want to factor in, especially if you think about where Mercury has been over the last, 3 or 4 weeks. We had Mercury before in the sign of Capricorn, moving under the beams of the Sun and out of visibility as a morning star. So for a long time, you see Mercury rising right before sunrise. And then one day, Mercury is no longer visible. Shortly after losing visibility, Mercury then last week conjoins Pluto, having moved into the sign of Aquarius. And simultaneously, we get the new moon coming through. If you saw last week's video, and that new moon was trining Jupiter. So an interesting progression as Mercury goes through that last part of the morning star synodic phase and is burnt up under the Sun, under combustion, having gone by Pluto. Really intense stuff, right? And then eventually Mercury makes the Cazimi this week. And then what is really fascinating, though, is if you think about Mercury ending up in Pisces. Let me just go by weeks here, and just even though this is outside of the purview of just the astrology this week, look at what happens. Let's just say by the middle of February-ish, we have Mercury. Maybe it's more toward the end. More toward the end of February. We have Mercury in Pisces emerging back into visibility, now this time as an evening star and in Pisces. So one thing that we'll talk about here in a second that is important to consider when you think about the transition of Mercury is that, first of all, Cazimi square to Uranus, that for me already sounds like it's bringing in some pretty interesting fireworks or something exciting, maybe even something disruptive, rebellious, right? You have this Cazimi moment where Mercury moves onto the heart of the sun, and there's a kind of empowerment that Mercury is imbued with all the power of the sun, all the sun's knowledge, all the sun's gnosis, the wisdom, the bright luminosity of seeing something very clearly. You get this moment with Mercury Cazimis at times that are very illuminating. And then in square to Uranus, we're talking about there's something illuminating, right, that is also connected with something that has a revolutionary spirit or a disruptive, exciting, experimental kind of connection to it. But the fact that you're in the broader picture of Mercury's transition or transformation from the morning star into the evening star, we've got Mercury as a morning star in Aquarius being potentially more that morning star having the nature of having that rational, mechanical, one could say masculine or yang, outwardly pushing kind of version of itself, right? It says what it thinks, doesn't care if it's shocking, doesn't consider the social ramifications. It's just pushing out its thoughts, its ideas, it's taking action. It's diurnal, it's daytime, it's rising in the morning, ready to, kick butt and take names. And then that transition as it passes over the sun and is reborn as the evening star moves it into not only a more yin or feminine part of its phase. It has a phase shift into something that is more nighttime, potentially more connected with social things or with emotions, feelings, things like that. And then it moves into Pisces and is in this empathetic, sensitive, watery place. You sort of get the sense that, wow, there is a real big shift with Mercury moving out of a colder, steelier, just real mechanical, mathematical, rational place that's much more like, wow, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What are other people thinking? How is this affecting them? What's happening inside? What's gestational or things like that? So that's the big picture about what's happening. And this week is a big part of that. So just wanted you guys to think about that as we go into the 4 themes here that you may run into this week as this part of cycle that's unfolding. Now, theme number 1 is going to be carrying the soup with steady hands. I almost rejected this theme for a different theme that was something like, where is it here? A steady hand on the rudder that navigates the storm. Okay, this one is going to be about, remember that Mars trine Saturn perfects exactly as the Mercury Cazimi is becoming, a perfect Cazimi. It's within 20 minutes that both of these astrological phenomena happen. So we're talking about the first one as the Mars trine Saturn, as kind of Mars maybe representing those things that are in Cancer, maybe a little bit uncomfortable, disruptive, like the boiling waters, the boiling emotions, the difficult circumstances in the family or just in life in general, but that uncomfortable sort of maybe more emotionally reactive kind of like bubbling, boiling thing that is happening below the surface. And then we've been dealing with this for a while now, right? But here comes Saturn and sort of lays like a calm, mature hand on Mars and says, it's going to be okay. Just relax and take it easy. It suggests that cooler, slower, more measured temperament might aid things driven by that are more driven by stormy feelings or circumstances. This is the quintessential uncomfortable circumstance that can be endured because we find ourselves keeping a steady, sturdy, determined, tempered attitude or resolve. You ever get these times where you catch yourself and you sort of like perk up and you're like, hey, I'm doing pretty good with this. Normally I'd be losing my, my shit right now, but somehow I have the ability to just relax and just sort of endure or like suffer through it. That's Saturn's form of support in this kind of way. Another analogy could be like for parents out there, you have young children and they're not developed in how they regulate their emotions, and little things happen and they can lose it over little things. But Saturn, let's say the parent is Saturn and Mars is like the young child that's losing it. Saturn can come along and think to himself, like, that's not a big deal. Like, it's okay. Don't worry. We can fix it. It's not a big deal. You spilled your cup. We'll just wipe it off again. Well, like whatever it is, right? But it's Saturn that's sort of able to sort of, like bring the calmness, the coolness, like, it's okay. It's no big deal. Like, whatever, just we'll get through it. It's all okay. It's not as bad as you think, kind of a thing. And there's that kind of steady, sturdy, determined, tempered attitude that is supporting the uncomfortability of what Mars and Cancer might be going through with and having a more difficult time, so to speak. So that is something you may notice in a theme for this week that I think could be a positive part of this. Now, with any aspect, we also can get the potential for a negative side of the same aspect, right? An example, this last week, we had the new moon trine to Jupiter in 2 air signs. And where I live, there was a big storm and I was totally unprepared for this storm. And at the last minute, I had to do all kinds of preparation for the storm. And it was a big windstorm. So, it flipped my trampoline over 3 times. It flipped it over once, it flipped it back over, and then it flipped it over a 3rd time. I was unprepared. And all the while I'm thinking to myself, I'm like talking to the cosmos and being like, what are you doing, God? Like, this is Jupiter trine moment in time. Right? This isn't supposed to be bad. But with the context of dignities, planetary dignities, and things like that, you have to add that into the story. Any aspect can have a negative side to it. Any negative aspect can sometimes bring positive things. So it's contextual. This is sort of the context that, if you think about it, we are talking about Mars and Saturn. Mars is a malefic. Saturn's a malefic in ancient astrology. We're talking about 2 planets that represent things we could experience as negative subjectively. And what happens when you get 2 negative planets together in any aspect? But sometimes in a trine, it can be like one negative thing can support another, right? Like, this is the kind of like, if you're already frustrated, it's really easy to become pessimistic, right? Frustration begets pessimism, or pessimism begets frustration. It's Jupiter connected with the fertileness of growth and how that expands, right? And so it's potentially easy to sort of get into like a slipstream where it feels like, man, it's just like, what? When it rains, it pours, kind of a bad mood, bad frustration, bad attitude, So that would be a potential for the negative side of this probably positive aspect for a lot of people, but 2 malefics coming together, there could be that side of it as well. Now let's talk about the Mercury Cazimi square to Uranus. The first theme that I have is going to be These Songs of Freedom. Of course, this is a line taken out of Bob Marley's Redemption song. But when you think about Mercury, where Mercury's been, where Mercury's going, you had the new moon come through in Aquarius, in trine to Jupiter. Jupiter is a planet that is a lover of freedom. In one part of the archetypal Jupiter lens, you have this planet that wants freedom. So we have this new moon coming through, and it's saying, well, we're already looking for some freedom, right? Then you have Mercury finally making it to the Cazimi, and there is this is happening in the sign of Aquarius, a Saturn-ruled sign, an Aquarius placement that may be representing a kind of break from conventional things, right? Aquarius can be very much the quintessential rebel that says we're doing something new, we're going forward, we're breaking with convention, we're going against the grain. We are Bob Marley on the stage singing about throwing down Babylon and throwing off the oppression and the disorder of Babylon and all of that stuff. Like, we're getting rid of it, we're doing something more ideal, right? And then, of course, Uranus, who is the modern but incorrect ruler of the sign of Aquarius, is very much in line with the nature of the sign of Aquarius, right? But we all know that Uranus is connected with things like rebellions, revolts, freedom, all those kinds of things. So you just get this potential here for a lot of fireworks, the Cazimi that is coming in and saying, something's coming to my mind, something is bubbling up, it's real inspiring, it's exciting, but it has this kind of like, we need freedom, we need revolt, we need change, we need potential, maybe we even call in a certain amount of chaos or disruption because we need something that breaks the mold, right? And that can be demanding if not everybody is comfortable with that. But there's like that air, that spirit in the air, I think. The square between the Cazimi and Uranus coming after the new moon trine Jupiter might demand a kind of liberation in some form. Now, it's possible that we're not looking for things like everything in our life to be completely upended. It doesn't totally mean that we upend everything. It could mean that we're looking for ways to channel this energy in smaller ways, like simply by looking for maybe some different forms of entertainment, friendship, recreation, interests, etc. But I think if this energy is stifled, that is when it demands to be heard in more destructive or extreme ways. So this is not the kind of energy that you want to bottle. If you want to express it in healthy, small ways that feel good, feel like you're getting the freedom that you need. But if it runs into restriction, constriction, if it gets bottled up, that's where it becomes a lot more explosive, right? Or destructive in some ways. So that's the thing to watch out for. Now, this could very much be about the change to one's pursuits or ambitions or life direction. Cazimi's involving the sun. The sun oftentimes connects us to what kind of life direction or pursuit we're currently in, wanting to chase after, right? If there's some goal that we're really looking at, this could be a time where some goal becomes realized. It's obvious to our mind all of a sudden, and it may be that goal really demands a kind of change somehow, right? And it's really, really important. It could be disruptive, but this is keeping in with the spirit of well, this is what I really want to follow. I'm really following this kind of idea right now. This could also have to do with ideology, or ideological subscriptions that you belong to one's place in tribe or social political identity and membership, something that defines us and them as distinct groups. Now, this is not because we are interpreting the sign of Aquarius synonymously with the 11th house of groups, but because Saturn, the traditional ruler of Aquarius, is a lord of oppositions, and this is a Saturn-ruled sign. So within Aquarius, you have a kind of dialectic between two things that are at times contradictive. But be that as it may, especially if you've been following American politics right now, you know that this is already very much in the air, where there is, it has been for some time now. And I think Pluto moving into Aquarius is obviously representing this bigger, broader change. But it's going to be a moment where that is sort of punctuated a little bit more with a kind of explosive fireworks, where it's you can really get identified with a particular tribe or faction or group at this time that has that real punchy crossroads feeling to it, which of course brings us to the last one on the list that I have for you guys. And I actually came up with this one just a few minutes ago before I hit record. I kind of like this one the best. It's just a different angle on the same kind of one we were talking about. The Mercury Cazimi square Uranus might bring us into a general awareness that we're standing at a crossroads, or that we're in a moment of crisis on some level. Why? When Mercury, the messenger god, moves onto the heart of the sun. In ancient texts, this has been described as Mercury being empowered by the sun, illuminated and reborn, right? The Mercury transition from one synodic phase as rising in the morning to rising in the night, or from rising in the night to rising in the morning. That rebirth of Mercury on the heart of the sun is very potent. When this happens in square to Uranus, a planet symbolically associated with sudden change, right? Shocking disruptions, form breaking, experimentation, and discovery, you can see a stage set for a kind of birth of knowing in relation to something exciting and disruptive. Example here, Cam White's declaration video that he posted, I think it was last week, to other astrologers, carries this sentiment perfectly. So for those of you that have not seen Cam White's video, I forget the exact title, but first of all, trigger warning: if you're triggered by identifying politically in a certain way that you have very strong feelings towards, you might not want to watch this, because Cam White basically makes this video that is incredibly in alignment with the kind of awareness at a crossroads theme that I'm trying to articulate here. It was him sort of making that declaration, right? The Mercury Cazimi on the heart of the sun, giving an important message, saying, "I'm done. This is what I stand for, and I don't want the other. I want what I am holding up as the ideal. This is the message. I'm going to announce it and proclaim it, and I'm going to hold to it. And I don't care if who it offends." In fact, he almost seemed like he was going out of his way to offend. So I don't necessarily agree with the delivery that Cam had, but I do, what's the word? I would say that I love that Cam spoke his mind. I know that a lot of other people do too. And I regard that it was a bold choice to make, and he feels very strongly about it. And so I agree with that. I do agree with a lot of the points that he made. I think a lot of us would. But the point is not me personally what I agree with or don't agree with. The point is that you can see that there is a kind of first coming to an awareness that you're at some type of crossroads or crisis, and it demands change or action that is form breaking. Or it might also be that something shocking might bring you to the realization that sort of slaps you in the face, and you find yourself awake. That Cazimi moment where you're like, wow, I didn't even know I was sleeping on this, but there it is, and I got to do something about this. So a very exciting energy to have this week, and we find ourselves in the midst of this sort of broader changeover of Mercury. So a really important week for Mercury. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you guys got something good out of this. Please leave some comments if you want to share anything that you're thinking of. And I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you again next time on the channel. Until then, take care and bye for now.